It was a warm, breezy afternoon when the Johnson family, John, his wife Sarah, and their 8-year-old daughter Emily noticed the colorful posters plastered all over their small town of Maplewood. The posters advertised the arrival of an old-fashioned carnival, promising vintage rides, games, and attractions that would take visitors back in time. "We should definitely check it out," Sarah said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "It could be fun for all of us." Emily jumped up and down with glee. "I want to see the clowns and ride the Ferris wheel." John smiled, though he felt a slight unease he couldn't quite place. "All right, let's go this weekend. It'll be a nice break." That Saturday, the Johnsons arrived at the carnival grounds just as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the vintage rides and colorful tents. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, carnival music, and the smell of popcorn and cotton candy. They wandered through the attractions, Emily's eyes wide with wonder as she took in the sights. She rode the carousel, played a few games, and laughed at the antics of the roaming clowns. It was a perfect family outing until they encountered him. As they strolled through the midway, they came across a clown standing near an old, weathered tent. He was different from the others, with a faded costume, sad eyes, and a worn-out face that looked almost haunted. His name tag read Bobo. Bobo's eyes seemed to light up when he saw Emily. He approached her, bending down to her level. "Hello, little one. What's your name?" he asked in a gravelly voice. Emily hesitated, then smiled shyly. "I'm Emily. Nice to meet you," Emily Bobo replied, handing her a balloon animal. "You have a lovely family." John and Sarah exchanged uneasy glances. Something about Bobo felt off. His attention on Emily was too intense, too personal. As they moved on, John couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He turned back and saw Bobo standing there, staring after them, his expression unreadable. Over the next few days, strange things began happening. At home, Emily would hum a haunting melody that John and Sarah didn't recognize. When asked, she simply said, "Bobo taught me." At night, they would hear eerie carnival music playing faintly, though there were no speakers or radios on. And on more than one occasion, John spotted a figure resembling Bobo lurking near their house, disappearing into the shadows when approached. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Emily looked up and asked, "Can we go back to the carnival tomorrow?" John and Sarah exchanged worried looks. "I don't think that's a good idea," sweetie, Sarah said gently. "We've had enough fun for now." "But Bobo said I should come back," Emily insisted, her eyes wide and innocent. John felt a chill run down his spine. "Bobo doesn't decide what we do, Emily. We do." Determined to understand what was happening, John decided to investigate the carnival's history. He visited the local library and dug through old newspapers and records. What he found was disturbing. The carnival had a dark past. Years ago, a clown named Bobo had died under mysterious circumstances. Some said it was an accident, others whispered about foul play. But one thing was clear: Bobo's spirit was rumored to haunt the carnival, especially around children. John shared his findings with Sarah. "We need to keep Emily away from that carnival," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "There's something sinister about that place." Sarah nodded, her face pale. "But what do we do about Bobo? He seems to be fixated on Emily." "We'll have to confront him," John replied grimly. "Find out what he wants and how to stop him." That night, as they prepared for bed, the eerie music started again, louder this time. Emily seemed to be in a trance, humming along with the tune. John and Sarah decided it was time to take action. They drove to the carnival grounds, which were eerily quiet and deserted at this late hour. The lights flickered, casting long shadows that danced in the breeze. They found the old tent where they had first met Bobo, and with a deep breath, they stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, filled with old props and faded posters. And there, in the center of the tent, stood Bobo, his sad eyes fixed on them. "Why are you haunting us?" John demanded, his voice echoing in the empty space. "What do you want with our daughter?" Bobo sighed, a sound filled with sorrow. "I don't mean any harm. I only wanted to protect her." "Protect her?" From what Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "From the same fate that befell me," Bobo replied. He gestured around the tent. "This place is cursed. I was the first, but many others have suffered. The carnival takes its toll, especially on children." John and Sarah exchanged horrified glances. "How do we stop it?" John asked, desperation in his voice. "You must break the cycle," Bobo said. "Destroy the source of the curse. Only then will I and the others be free." Determined to save their daughter and put an end to the hauntings, John and Sarah delved deeper into the carnival's dark secrets. They discovered that the curse was tied to an old, decrepit carousel hidden behind the main attractions. According to legend, the carousel was where the carnival's owner had performed dark rituals to ensure the carnival's success, sacrificing the lives of innocent children in the process. The couple knew what they had to do. That night, they returned to the carnival grounds armed with gasoline and matches. They found the old carousel, its once bright colors now faded, and its horses eerily lifelike in the moonlight. As they poured gasoline over the carousel, they felt a malevolent presence growing stronger. Shadows moved in the corners of their vision, and whispers filled the air. But they pressed on, determined to end the curse once and for all. With a final, defiant act, John struck a match and threw it onto the carousel. The flames roared to life, consuming the cursed structure. The air was filled with the sounds of screaming, and the shadows writhed as if in agony. As the fire burned, Bobo appeared one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, his form shimmering in the heat. "You have freed us all." The next morning, the carnival was gone, leaving only ashes and a few charred remnants behind. The strange occurrences stopped, and Emily no longer hummed the haunting melody. John and Sarah were relieved, but they couldn't forget the horrors they had faced. They decided to move away from Maplewood, seeking a fresh start for their family. Years later, Emily, now a young woman, would sometimes ask about the old carnival. John and Sarah would share the story of Bobo, the haunted clown who had tried to protect her, and the dark secrets they had uncovered. And though they never spoke of it often, they knew they had done the right thing. They had broken the curse, saved their daughter, and put an end to the carnival's dark legacy. The Thompson family, Mark, his wife Rachel, and their teenage son Ethan were excited for their night out at the newly arrived carnival. It had been years since they had all gone together, and this one promised to be something special. The posters around town boasted of thrilling rides, delicious food, and attractions that would make for unforgettable memories. "Come on, Dad. Let's check out the funhouse first," Ethan said, practically bouncing with excitement as they entered the carnival grounds. Rachel laughed. "Sure, why not? It looks like a lot of fun." Mark agreed, though he felt a slight twinge of apprehension. He couldn't quite put his finger on why, but something about the carnival felt off. Shaking off the feeling, he followed his family toward the brightly lit funhouse, its entrance adorned with garish clowns and swirling lights. The funhouse was a towering structure, a labyrinth of mirrors, twisting corridors, and hidden rooms. The entrance beckoned them in with a large, grinning clown face, its mouth open wide, as if to swallow them whole. Ethan led the way, followed closely by Rachel and Mark. The moment they stepped inside, the atmosphere changed. The cheerful carnival sounds were replaced by eerie, echoing laughter and the distant sound of Calliope music. They navigated the maze of mirrors, their reflections distorting and multiplying around them. It was disorienting, but Ethan was having a blast, laughing as he made funny faces at his reflections. "Look at me. I'm everywhere," he exclaimed. Rachel smiled, though she felt a growing unease. "Stay close, Ethan. We don't want to get separated." Mark, bringing up the rear, glanced around nervously. The air felt thick and oppressive, and the laughter that had seemed playful now had an unsettling edge. As they moved deeper into the funhouse, the corridors grew narrower and the atmosphere darker. The once playful mirrors now reflected shadows that didn't belong to them, and the laughter seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Maybe we should head back," Mark suggested, his voice tinged with concern. "Oh, come on, Dad. We're almost through," Ethan said, though his own enthusiasm had waned slightly. Rachel nodded. "Let's just keep moving. We can't be far from the exit." They pushed on, but the funhouse seemed to stretch on endlessly. The mirrors and corridors gave way to rooms filled with animatronic clowns and eerie decorations that moved and cackled as they passed. The cheerful funhouse had become a nightmarish maze. In one room, an animatronic clown lunged at them, its eyes glowing red. Rachel screamed, grabbing Ethan's hand tightly. "We need to get out of here." Mark tried to stay calm. "This way," he said, leading them down another corridor. The deeper they went, the more the funhouse seemed to twist and turn, defying logic. They passed through rooms filled with fog, flashing lights, and disembodied voices whispering unintelligible words. Their sense of direction was completely lost. "Mom, I'm scared," Ethan admitted, his earlier bravado gone. Rachel hugged him close. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll find our way out." Mark was growing increasingly frantic. Every turn seemed to lead them further into the maze, and the air felt colder, almost suffocating. "There's got to be an exit somewhere," he muttered, more to himself than to his family. They entered another room, this one filled with distorted mirrors that made their reflections appear monstrous. In the dim light, Mark thought he saw something move out of the corner of his eye, a shadow that didn't match any of theirs. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice shaking. Rachel nodded, her face pale. "Let's keep moving. We need to get out of here." After what felt like hours of wandering, they stumbled upon a small, dimly lit room that seemed different from the others. In the center was a dusty old trunk, and around the walls were faded posters and photographs of carnivals from years past. Curious and desperate for answers, Mark opened the trunk. Inside, they found old journals, newspaper clippings, and photographs. As they sifted through the items, they began to piece together a chilling story. The funhouse had once belonged to a carnival that traveled the country in the early 1900s. It was run by a man named Jasper Grimes, who was known for his sinister sense of humor. According to the journals, Grimes had a dark obsession with fear, and he enjoyed trapping people in his funhouse, feeding off their terror. One journal entry stood out: "The funhouse is my masterpiece. It lives, it breathes, and it feeds on the fear of those who dare enter. Once inside, they are mine forever." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. This place is cursed. It's not just a funhouse, it's a trap. Rachel looked at him, fear in her eyes. "We have to find a way out now." Armed with the knowledge of the funhouse's dark history, the Thompsons pressed on, determined to find an exit. As they moved, the atmosphere grew even more oppressive, and the presence of something sinister became undeniable. The walls seemed to close in around them, and the shadows moved with a life of their own. The laughter and music were now twisted and malevolent, echoing through the corridors. In one particularly narrow hallway, they came face to face with a figure that was not a reflection or an animatronic. It was Jasper Grimes himself, or rather, his ghostly apparition. His eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and his mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "Welcome to my funhouse," he said, his voice echoing with a supernatural timbre. "You can never leave." Ethan clung to his mother, terrified. "Dad, what do we do?" Mark stood protectively in front of his family. "We know about you, Grimes. We know what you did." Grimes laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. "Knowledge won't save you. The funhouse demands its tribute." Desperate to escape, Mark remembered the journals and the clues they had found. There had to be a way to break the curse and free them from the funhouse. "Look for a symbol, something that can break the curse," he urged his family. They frantically searched the room, overturning objects and scanning the walls. Finally, Rachel found a hidden compartment behind a poster. Inside was a small, ornate mirror with strange symbols etched into its frame. "This must be it," she said, holding up the mirror. Mark took the mirror and faced Grimes's ghost. "This ends now," he said, his voice steady. He held the mirror up to Grimes, and the symbols began to glow. The ghost screamed, a sound of pure agony, and the funhouse seemed to tremble around them. The walls shook, and the lights flickered wildly. The mirror absorbed the malevolent energy, and Grimes's apparition began to fade. "No, you cannot destroy me," he cried, his voice growing fainter. With a final, ear-piercing scream, Grimes disappeared, and the funhouse fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the walls seemed to right themselves. They were free. The Thompsons quickly made their way back through the now calm corridors. The mirrors no longer distorted their reflections, and the eerie laughter and music had ceased. They finally reached the exit, stepping out into the cool night air. Breathing deeply, they embraced each other, relieved to be out of the nightmare. The carnival around them continued as if nothing had happened, but the funhouse entrance was now dark and silent. "We need to tell someone about this," Rachel said, her voice shaking. Mark nodded. "But who would believe us?" Ethan looked up at his parents, his face pale but determined. We need to make sure no one else goes in there." The next day, the Thompsons returned to the carnival with the journals and photographs they had found. They approached the carnival manager, Mr. Bailey, and told him their story. Skeptical at first, he reluctantly agreed to check the funhouse himself. When he emerged, his face was pale, and he ordered the funhouse closed immediately. "I'll look into this," he said, clearly shaken. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention." The Thompsons left the carnival, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering fear. They had survived the haunted funhouse, but the experience had left its mark. In the months that followed, the Thompsons tried to put the experience behind them. They moved to a new town, hoping for a fresh start. But the memory of the funhouse lingered, a reminder of the night they faced true terror. Ethan had nightmares for a while, but with the support of his parents, he gradually recovered. Mark and Rachel grew closer, their bond strengthened by the ordeal they had survived together. Years later, the funhouse became the stuff of local legend. Some believed the Thompson story, while others dismissed it as a wild tale. But the funhouse remained closed, a dark monument to the horrors within. And so, the Thompsons moved forward with their lives, forever changed by their night in the haunted funhouse. The carnival had arrived in town with much fanfare, bringing with it the promise of thrilling rides, delightful food, and mesmerizing shows. Among the attractions was the famed magician, the Great Alistair, known for his astonishing disappearing act. For years, people had marveled at his ability to make audience volunteers vanish into thin air, only to reappear moments later, unharmed and bewildered. However, recently, something had gone terribly wrong. Several volunteers had vanished during the act and never returned. The carnival dismissed these disappearances as mere coincidences, but rumors of foul play began to circulate. Emily Carter, an investigative journalist for the local newspaper, was intrigued. Always on the lookout for a good story, she decided to delve into the mystery surrounding the missing volunteers. With her notepad in hand and a determination to uncover the truth, she set off to the carnival. The carnival grounds were a cacophony of sights and sounds. Brightly colored tents dotted the landscape, and the air was filled with the scent of popcorn and cotton candy. Children laughed as they rode the Ferris wheel, and the sound of carnival barkers enticed passers-by to try their luck at various games. Emily made her way to the center of the carnival, where the Great Alistair's tent stood. It was larger than the others, adorned with twinkling lights and a banner that read, "Witness the impossible, the Great Alistair's astonishing disappearing act." Emily approached the ticket booth, where a young woman smiled warmly at her. "One ticket, please," Emily said, handing over a few dollars. "You're in for a treat," the woman said, handing her a ticket. "The Great Alistair is the best magician I've ever seen." Emily smiled politely and made her way inside the tent, finding a seat near the front. The audience was abuzz with excitement, eagerly awaiting the show to begin. The lights dimmed and the tent fell silent. A spotlight illuminated the stage, where a tall, slender man with a neatly trimmed beard and piercing blue eyes stepped forward. He was dressed in a black tuxedo with a red satin lining and a top hat. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice smooth and commanding. "I am the Great Alistair, and tonight you will witness the impossible." The audience erupted in applause, and Emily watched intently, her journal open on her lap. She had a feeling that the key to the mystery lay in this very tent. Alistair began his act with a series of impressive tricks cards that appeared out of thin air, objects that levitated, and doves that emerged from his sleeves. The audience was enthralled, their eyes wide with wonder. Finally, it was time for the main event. Alistair gestured to a large, ornate box at the center of the stage. "And now, for my grand finale," he announced, "I will need a volunteer from the audience." Several hands shot up, and Alistair scanned the crowd before pointing to a young woman in the front row. "You, my dear," he said, beckoning her to the stage. The woman, excited and a little nervous, climbed onto the stage and stepped into the box. Alistair closed the door and locked it, then draped a heavy velvet curtain over it. "Watch closely," he instructed the audience, "for what you are about to see is pure magic." With a flourish, he pulled the curtain aside, revealing the box now empty. The audience gasped, and Emily leaned forward, her heart pounding. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Alistair closed the curtain again and tapped the box with his wand. When he pulled the curtain aside, the box was still empty. The audience's gasps turned to murmurs of confusion. Alistair's face remained impassive, but Emily noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, fear. After the show, Emily lingered near the stage, hoping to catch Alistair alone. As the crowd dispersed, she approached him. "Excuse me, Mr. Alistair," she said. "I'm Emily Carter, a journalist. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your act." Alistair's eyes narrowed. "I have nothing to say to you," he replied curtly, turning away. "Please," Emily persisted. "People are missing. Someone has to find out what happened to them." Alistair hesitated, then sighed. "Meet me at my trailer after midnight," he said quietly. "I can't talk here." Emily nodded, her heart racing. She spent the next few hours wandering the carnival, her mind racing with questions. As midnight approached, she made her way to Alistair's trailer, a small, unassuming structure near the edge of the carnival grounds. Alistair opened the door and motioned for her to come inside. The trailer was dimly lit and sparsely furnished, with a small table and a few chairs. Alistair gestured for her to sit. "I'll tell you what I can," he said, sitting across from her. "But you must promise not to share this with anyone until you have the full story." Emily agreed, her pen poised over her notepad. "Start from the beginning," she said. Alistair took a deep breath. "My real name is Albert Stevens. I've been a magician for over 20 years. The disappearing act was always my most popular trick, but it wasn't always dangerous." He explained that years ago he had come across an old, tattered book in a second-hand shop. The book contained spells and rituals, promising to unlock real magical powers. Intrigued, he had purchased the book and began studying its contents. "I didn't believe in magic at first," he admitted. "But the more I practiced, the more I realized the book's power was real. I started using some of the simpler spells in my act, and they worked. The audiences loved it." But as Alistair delved deeper into the book, he discovered darker spells that required sacrifices. He claimed he had never intended to use them, but one night, during a particularly difficult performance, he had turned to the book out of desperation. "The spell worked," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The volunteer disappeared just as the book promised. But when it came time to bring them back, they were gone. Completely vanished. He had tried to reverse the spell, but nothing worked. The volunteer was lost, and Alistair realized too late that the book's power came at a terrible cost. Since then, every time I perform the disappearing act, there's a chance the volunteer won't come back," he said. "I don't know where they go, but I can feel their presence, trapped somewhere between our world and something else." Emily shuddered. "Why do you keep performing the act?" Alistair looked down, shame etched on his face. "The book binds me. I can't stop. Every time I try to leave the carnival, it pulls me back. It's like a curse." Determined to help, Emily began researching the carnival and its history. She spent hours in the local library, combing through old newspapers and records. She discovered that the carnival had a long history of mysterious disappearances, dating back decades. Each time, the pattern was the same: volunteers vanished during the magic show, never to be seen again. She also learned that the book Alistair had found was rumored to be cursed, its origins lost to time. It was said to have been created by a dark magician who had made a pact with otherworldly forces, binding anyone who used it to its power. Emily knew she had to find a way to break the curse and free Alistair from its grip. She returned to the carnival, determined to confront him with her findings. "Alistair, I found something," Emily said, bursting into his trailer. "The book you're using, it's cursed. It was created by a dark magician who made a pact with otherworldly forces. We need to destroy it." Alistair looked at her with a mixture of hope and fear. "I tried to destroy it once," he said. "It just reappeared, as if nothing had happened." Emily took a deep breath. There must be a way to break the curse. Maybe there's something in the book that can help us. Together, they pored over the book, searching for any clues that might lead them to a solution. Finally, they found a passage that mentioned a ritual to break the curse. It required a powerful sacrifice, a willing volunteer to perform the ritual and free the trapped souls. "I'll do it," Alistair said, his voice resolute. "I brought this curse upon myself. It's only right that I should be the one to end it." Emily nodded, her heart heavy. "Let's do it tonight, after the carnival closes." That night, as the carnival wound down and the crowds dispersed, Emily and Alistair prepared for the ritual. They set up the stage with the necessary items: candles, chalk, and the cursed book. Emily stood by, ready to assist. Alistair stepped into the center of the circle they had drawn and began reciting the incantation from the book. The air around them seemed to thrum with energy, and the candles flickered as if caught in a gust of wind. As Alistair spoke the final words, the air grew cold, and a dark mist began to form around him. Emily watched in horror as the mist enveloped him, pulling him into the darkness. She heard his voice, faint and distant, as he called out to her. "Emily, remember, the book must be destroyed." With a final burst of energy, the mist dissipated and Alistair was gone. The candles flickered out, plunging the stage into darkness. Emily stood there, shaking, clutching the book to her chest. She knew what she had to do. With trembling hands, she tore the book apart, ripping its pages and setting them alight with a nearby candle. As the book burned, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The curse was broken, and the trapped souls were free. She only hoped that Alistair had found peace as well. In the days that followed, the carnival packed up and left town, leaving behind only memories of the strange and terrifying events. Emily wrote an article detailing her investigation and the truth behind the disappearances, though she left out the more fantastical elements. The story made headlines, and the town was abuzz with talk of the cursed carnival and the brave journalist who had uncovered its secrets. Emily received a flood of letters and calls, some praising her bravery, others skeptical of her claims. Despite the attention, Emily remained haunted by the events she had witnessed. She often thought of Alistair and the sacrifice he had made to break the curse. She hoped he had found peace, and that the souls he had inadvertently trapped were finally free. Life slowly returned to normal for Emily. She continued her work as a journalist, but the experience at the carnival had changed her. She became more cautious, more aware of the unseen forces that lurked in the shadows. Years later, she returned to the town where the carnival had appeared, curious to see if there were any lingering traces of the past. To her surprise, she found a small memorial at the site of the carnival, dedicated to the missing volunteers and the brave magician who had freed them. Emily stood before the memorial, a sense of closure washing over her. She placed a flower at its base, a silent tribute to Alistair and the others who had suffered because of the cursed book. As she walked away, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that the dark chapter of the carnival was finally closed. The disappearances had been avenged, and the spirits were at rest. And so, Emily moved forward with her life, carrying the lessons she had learned and the memories of those she had met. She knew that some mysteries were meant to be uncovered, and some secrets were best left buried. If you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.